just putting these away. How can I help you? Okay. And were you looking for a specific book or an author? Oh, okay, nice. We actually do have a section right over here with some of those books. Were you looking for like an animal identification book, or were you looking more for the history of the Pacific Northwest? Okay. Well, I think I can definitely help you with that. First off, welcome. You picked a great place to move to. It is just amazing here. Are you going to be doing a lot of traveling? Is that something you like to do? Okay. Yeah, I feel like when you move here, that's kind of essential. You have so much to do around here. Right now we're in Idaho, but I mean, when you go over into Washington, it just turns into another world. And then there's Oregon, and don't get me started on the Oregon coast. It's absolutely beautiful. It's otherworldly to me. So were you interested in hiking and things like that, and like foraging? Okay, so a little bit of everything. Alright, well, I think I'm just going to show you a little bit of everything then. I have some personal books with me that I can definitely order for you. I think we might have some of them in stock, but I have them off to the side. I always bring them with me. I throw them in my bag just because I never know when I want to go on a little hike or something like that. And it's really nice to have the actual hardcover books, especially when you're hiking. Here, you might not have service, so having a book to know like what flower you're looking at or to know if something's edible is really, really great. And of course, I have some books that are not personal books and just are books that we have in stock. We have some identification type books where it's more so just pictures and not a lot about the history, or just not a lot of information. Like I have some bird books that go into depth about the bird's migration and all the different types of nests, but then there's also ones where it's just pictures and how to identify them, and they're all categorized by color so that when you're out on a hike or you're sightseeing, you can see that particular bird. Or we have butterfly books as well. You open it up to the color which that animal is, and then it's easier to tell which one you found. But why don't I get started? I'm surprised it's not more beat up because I take this everywhere with me, and this really sparked my love and appreciation for foraging, and it actually is useful. Like I found a lot of berries and different plants that I can use from this book, and I think there's a lot of fear around foraging, like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna take something that might kill me, but I don't think it's as scary as some people may make it out to be, as long as you have the proper knowledge. And a book like this, and we have some other ones where it's got everything there for you. It's going to tell you what to look out for, and it even tells you that even though some of these are edible, it will say, hey, this might give you a reaction, because not all edible plants go down well with everybody. They might upset your stomach. So this book lets you know, and all the foraging books, they're pretty good with telling you what not to touch, what not to pick, because there definitely are lookalikes. But even when these books don't mention the dangerous lookalikes, they give enough information for each plant, for each species, where if you're out in the wild and you find something and it's not matching all the descriptors in here, or all of the requirements, like there's height specifications, there's color specifications, and if you find something that doesn't meet what's in the book, then you know, hey, I'm not going to pick this because I don't know for sure. But this is a really good beginner's book. It is Pacific Northwest Foraging, And this book is, of course, good for all the Pacific Northwest. And I'll go ahead and show you the pages. So at first, it talks about the different seasons when you're going to be able to find certain things. And of course, now we are coming out of winter, so it might be discouraging right now. But of course, you're just moving. Maybe you're just settling in. It's, of course, good to read up first before just throwing yourself out into nature. But you're going to start seeing more flowers in spring and summer, and, seeing berries and things. We only have so much color for so long, but that can be said for a lot of the US, especially all up north. But one thing that I really love to forage that is abundant is the huckleberry, and there's actually quite a few different types of huckleberries. You can find huckleberries in different environments, but you're going to find them most in higher elevation, in places above 2,000 feet, and you'll find them mostly at 4,000, 5,000 feet, even higher than that. And you'll notice if you do start hitting some trails that as you start lower, and if you're going to do like a mountain hike, if you're going to gain elevation, when you start lower, you'll find things like thimbleberries or other plants that grow in low elevation, and as you climb, you might start to see huckleberries, and you'll see more and more of them. But of course, huckleberries aren't a guarantee when you go into the mountains here. You definitely have to, research the spots you want depending on where you're living or where you want to take a trip. But usually, if you go to a pretty popular place, like I know in the Snoqualmie National Forest region, there's lots of huckleberries. Even over here where we live, there's a lot of huckleberries. You just have to find the good spots. But it is very popular to find huckleberries off of old logging roads, so a lot of the time you might look up on maps just a mountain or like a pass where it's still got a nice road. You might have to get off the paved road a little bit, park, and then go rummage and forage for these berries in the woods. But if you didn't know, huckleberries are a main source of food for bears, so always bring bear spray. That's something to note. Whenever you are foraging, I would have bear spray. Whenever you're hiking, I would have bear spray. Now normally you won't have a problem, and even if you do see a bear, there's things you can do to make yourself not a threat to them, but you never know, especially when bears are coming out of hibernation, if they're going to be hungry. Maybe it's a particularly upset bear, so you definitely always want to have bear spray, but don't let that discourage you. I would recommend going with other people. Bears don't want to be around lots of people or loud people. But I have here the red huckleberry. I have found these, and I have found them near us. These, don't get them mistaken with just unripe huckleberries. Huckleberries tend to be ripe here and in more lower elevations, so under 6,000 feet. Those berries are ready around mid-June, and they can be good until August, September, but I find that mid-June and July you find good berries. So if you do go then and they're red like this, you found yourself a red huckleberry, and they're just a little more sour, but it's really cool to find them because normally there's not as many bushes as your typical huckleberry. And you'll definitely know if there's bushes around it. Sometimes there's black huckleberries or mountain huckleberries within the red huckleberry bushes, or next to, and you can tell when you see an unripe huckleberry. Normally they're reddish purpley and they're not bright red like this. But let's see, this book is great. It says how to identify, it says when and where to gather, how to eat, and future harvests. And I really love the Native American history and traditions that are woven into this book. I really appreciate the author for putting in some of that history and how the indigenous people who lived here before us and are still living here actually, how they would have prepared it and how they still prepare it. Well, they actually would even leave some berries out to dry to almost become like raisins, and that way the berries would last longer if they're going to travel, especially traveling based on the seasons changing. But yeah, like this one, it says Native American harvesters traditionally use berry rakes, small wooden contraptions that are combed through the foliage while berries are caught below. I don't even use like a rake, I go in one by one, but of course that is very smart because it takes hours and hours to get a lot of berries. And it talks about the taste, and like this berry, it says where to gather. It says it's abundant, partially shaded forest atop rotting wood or soil-rich in organic material. The berries are among the first berries to arrive in the region's forests. They sometimes develop as early as late spring, and a good bush can keep producing well into early autumn. And I would say that's very true. It says it's 3 to 12 feet tall. That's very helpful as well, especially when we talk about black huckleberries or just huckleberries that are a blackish bluish color, because you can mistake them for blueberries, but then when you look at the leaf pattern and design and the length of the plant, that is very helpful then to decipher, because huckleberries are very similar to blueberries, but of course the red huckleberry will be one of the easiest to identify with its bright color, but as you can see from the picture, huckleberries do not protrude out from this opening here like a blueberry, so that's really helpful when you're looking as well. But I did find the red huckleberries in a shaded forest area on the side of like a forest service road, so I would say that is very accurate. And when you find huckleberries in the sun, especially into mid to late summer, sometimes they're dried up, so it is very helpful for these berries to grow in shaded area. There's a lot of other berries and plants in general. This one is a salmonberry. These are very popular in Oregon, especially along the Columbia River Gorge area with all those waterfall hikes. So if you travel there, you're going to see a lot of salmonberries. I've seen them myself. I wish I took some to eat, but I was enthralled by all the waterfalls while I was there. If you're more into like herbal medicine and teas and things like that, they've got all that for you. I even found some wild nodding onion, which does have a dangerous look-alike, but as this book talks about, it has a strong onion flavor, the real nodding onion, but the fake poison stuff does not smell like onion, so that's pretty easy to identify then, especially if you have a good sense of smell. If you don't have a good sense of smell or you can't smell, I wouldn't go looking for nodding onions, but I'll find that for you. It's in alphabetical order, of course. The bulbs are normally super small, so it kind of just looks like a green onion, but the tops are reminiscent of chives, and I did forage some and use some as like chives on top of a baked potato. It was amazing. I love using things that I forage. And yeah, these are really, really great for cooking. And let's see. Oh yeah, it even talks about future harvests. I really love that. It also talks about Native American history with that. Like a lot of the berries and things we have today in the Pacific Northwest, and I mean all over the US, are thanks to the indigenous. I mean, they really did farm. They would spread the seeds and they planted. They would burn areas and people would look down upon them. You know, the Europeans, once they came over, they would look down upon them, when in reality they would burn areas to give new life, and they would plant these seeds. They would put huckleberries smashed into the soil to keep them growing and to be able to keep harvesting them. And here it does talk about how you can plant these. And I like that because if you're foraging, it's nice to know like how much you should take, or maybe if you should put some on the ground. But anyways, sorry for rambling. I really do love this book. It's got history, it's got everything you need to identify a certain species. It's got the scientific names. It's cool to look at the similarities, especially between like the different huckleberry types. The scientific names. But after all that, do you think you'd be interested in this book? Okay, perfect. Well, I have some more copies on the floor, so I can go ahead and get that for you, and we're done. I also have, I don't know if you're interested in the national parks. There's only a few in the Pacific Northwest. There's a lot in California, which we're not too far from. But this is not Pacific Northwest specific. This is just about the national parks. But one amazing national park where you can forage a lot and find a lot of beautiful birds and animals, that would be Olympic National Park. And this book has all the amazing artwork for the postcards that they sell in the parks. I believe I might have some. I'm not sure if it's the same artist. I think it is. It's like the same style. I don't know if it's the same artist, but I do know that when you go to the national parks, there's different scenes for the different postcards, and it's in this similar art style. But either way, it's got the art, the little postcard pictures, but of course it's got a little bit of information that you need to know. Not a whole lot of information because it's got a lot of parks in it. But let me show you Olympic National Park. Oh, well, we do have North Cascades in Washington, and this is a pretty barren national park. Like, it gets very busy. In the summer, you'll see cars lined up for a lot of like popular famous hikes, but there's not a whole lot there. If you drive far enough, there's a lot of different places to stay and a lot of campsites, but for a while you're not close to a lot of food or gas or much of anything, and you definitely won't have service. But I think that always makes it so much more beautiful when it hasn't been completely capitalized on. I love the North Cascades. Lots of foraging there, lots of things to see. And then of course there's Olympic National Park, which is a really unique national park. This is also in Washington. If you like Twilight, you might want to come here because part of the park, it's got two separate boundaries. Part of it is home to the Ho-H-O-H National Forest, and it is absolutely gorgeous. It's otherworldly. It reminds me of Twilight. It is so green. Everything is covered in moss and beautiful ferns and plants. I would love to be an expert on plants and just know everything around you. You can find so much there. And then as you go towards the coast to the west, because it's very close to the coast, you'll actually pass by forks, like the real life forks. They didn't film Twilight there, but that is what the book was based off of. And in the movie, they do talk about the Quileute Tribe. That is real. And the Quileute Tribe does have a reservation. They have reservation land on the coast. I'm not sure if part of their land is part of the national park, but I know that along the coast is the other territory or the boundary of the national park. There's still a lot of Twilight things there, and then towards the end of that is the tribe that the book is based off of, not going to go any further into the ethics of that or anything, but I think regardless, Twilight does fascinate a lot of people. But I did go there to Olympic National Park, to both the whole rainforest and the coast, and it is just beautiful. The coastal boundaries have all these gorgeous rocks, and it can be foggy, it can be chilly, but that's just part of the charm of the coast. But were you interested in a national park book? No? Okay. Yeah, there's not too much information on each. This is more of like a coffee table book, but I totally get it. Well, let's talk about the birds. Not the birds and the bees. We're not going to talk about bees today. We're going to talk about the birds. I did say I like Pacific Northwest books in general, and I do believe we have from this author, I think they do have a Pacific Northwest one. If it's not this author, it's another author, but this same author does a Washington bird book and all the other states, which they do have overlap, of course, with the birds they have. But we are in Idaho, so I thought I'd show you. This is my personal copy, that's why it's all messed up. And again, I do take this with me just for identification. And I think there's a checklist on the back. Yeah, here's all the birds, so you can actually check them off, so that's really cool. And this is based on color of the bird, so it is really, if you are interested in birds and identifying them, you would take this out with you, and if you saw one, even just if it was a quick glance, you can go to the black and white, the blue, the brown, whatever color the bird was, and then you look through it, and you can see which bird you saw. This book does have some information about birds, bird basics. It's got nest information, and it even has Idaho on each page. And it shows you when the birds are here. So a lot of birds in this book, of course, are here year-round, but some of them come, and it will say, like, in summer this bird comes, and this bird is much more colorful, even the female's colorful. The western bluebird, and it will show you which parts. Like, some birds are just in northern Idaho or in the more mountainous regions. And like this bird, it's here in the summer, and it shows you their migration, so that's kind of cool, how they spread out to the north and the east in the summer. That's the Birds of Idaho book, field guide. And there's a Washington book, don't know if you're interested in that. Of course, the more broad books are thicker. They're more in depth. Okay. Yeah, they're over there if you want to look. After, you can totally look at the more in-depth books. And let's look at some guides. These are not really books per se. They're little spiral paper notebook looking guides that are perfect for throwing in your bag. They're not too heavy, and it's just if you want to identify and if you want to have more knowledge on wildflowers, butterflies, identifying them, because a lot of them can look super similar, and it feels nice to see one and know automatically what it is. I did find this butterfly behind me in Washington. I wish I found it deceased in the wild. Unfortunately, it was in the grill of my car, and I felt so awful, but I wanted to give it a new life. And so you come here and you pick up so many hobbies. I really want to find more butterflies this year, this upcoming summer season, well, in the spring and summer, because butterflies only live about a week in the wild. Maybe they can live 2 weeks, so it's beautiful when you can find them and give them new life. But I do believe the butterfly I found is a pale swallowtail, just from this identification book. The wingspan is a little different, but I did have to, moisten the butterfly, pin it up to look like that, and then dry the butterfly out again. And so, of course, it's going to look more different than if they were flying in the wild. But even the colors on the bottom, like the bluish color and the orange color on the bottom, is pretty similar to this. Now, of course, you could take a picture, come home, and then use Google image search, and it'll probably come right up, which I have done. But I think it's more fun this way, and it really does help your knowledge. I really want to find this butterfly, Queen Alexandra's Sulphur. That is so gorgeous. Yeah. I like the bright colors. So yeah, of course, if the butterflies are alive, you can identify them, but I do think it's a cool hobby to find dead butterflies and to display them. I don't think it's gruesome because we're not killing the butterflies. I think it's beautiful. You give them a new life. And there's just so many beautiful ones. And these are butterflies of the Northwest, so there's a lot. There's a lot. This does, I believe, have, yes, it has the butterfly anatomy at the top. Talks about their tails. The bottom portion of the wing is the tail. Oh, wow, look at the moths. Alright, sounds good. Yeah, it's just small. It's informative. It's great if you're gonna be hiking or just driving up to a spot with some flowers and looking for butterflies. And then this one is really thick. So this isn't a foraging book like the other one I showed you. This is really for if you just want to know your flowers. There's so many beautiful wildflowers in the Pacific Northwest. I mean, just look at this. There's so many, and of course, I always want to know, like when I'm on a hike. Some people, they're just not interested in that, but I think it's so cool when you know your nature vocabulary, like to be able to look and tell the difference between each flower is a really neat skill to have. Yeah, and it just has descriptors to help you identify, and of course the picture is going to help you the most for these. It does, the cool thing about this is it has species that are in the foraging book, but if you don't know, every berry, it starts as a flower. And so it has, like the salmon berry I showed you, it shows you what the flower looks like. So this would happen in the spring, so if you're on a hike and you see these flowers, you would know that if you came back in the summer, that they would be berries. And I think that's really, really cool. Talks about the author a little bit. And even though they're in the same format, these are two different authors. If you're interested in wildflowers, I can certainly bring this one up for you as well. Alright. Sounds good. Okay. Do you see any that you're interested in? No? Okay. Okay, so you're going to get these two and the foraging one. Starting with foraging, wildflowers, and butterflies. That's a good start. Yeah, let's ring these up for you. Right. Okay, this one. Those are the same price. And the foraging one.